All right. All right. So we'll get going, and as people join, they join, and they'll learn to never be late. So, feedback. Got me. Okay. All right. Was that me or was that?
That was me.
That was you. Okay. All right. Scared me for a second. Welcome everyone. My name is Richard Bredesen. I am. I don't know what title I have. I have some title at Time to Market. That's where I'm employed. We have another awesome speaker that he'll introduce himself when it's his turn because, well, I'm like the warm-up gig for Michael. So welcome to the Minnesota teams. I like to keep the word Skype in there just for that legacy feeling. I don't have any Skype news to share. Actually, I do have Skype news to share, but I got to make sure that no one's on the call. And then, so yeah, let's jump into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what's new in the community. We'll talk about some meeting rooms and stuff like that with Michael. We'll hear from our sponsor Jabra, and then we're going to talk about what's new in Microsoft Teams. That is the agenda. As always, if you have questions, throw them in the chat, raise your hand, do something to get our attention. We are happy to answer questions. We like questions. Questions are good, typically. So thank you to T2M Works and Jabra for making this possible. For those who are here, I do have juice and muffins in the back. So bring me all the juice and muffins in the land, and you can eat them. Those online, you get no juice and muffins. Sorry. Virtual. You get virtual juice and muffins. It'll be a new emoji coming to Teams next week. All right, so what's new in the community? So a few calendar dates, and you will get this PowerPoint, so you don't have to scribble them down really fast, but it is worth noting there are some events that are coming up that you might want to be aware of. So on April 10th, online is the Minnesota Office 365 Users Group. They have a session. I forgot what they're about already. One's about syntax, and the other one is about Power Platform, if I remember correctly. I'm doing that completely off the top of my head, so I can be completely wrong. So that's the local users group here for everything Office 365. The 25th and the 26th is Comms vNext. That is the only Teams only or Teams specific event in North America. So if you are not going to Comms vNext, you should. It'll be about, it's typically 200-300 people. It is 2 days. I hear they've got like 70 sessions this year. Lots of people will be there. It'll be a fantastic event. So highly recommend. Plus Denver should be very lovely in April. The Office 365 users group, or the Microsoft 365, have their spring workshop day. So they do this twice a year, and this is an in-person event this year, and they are doing a true workshop. So each session is 2.5 hours long. They are lab-oriented. They are very get into the nitty-gritty, how things work, all kind of fun stuff like that. So it's a great event. I don't know if they've released all of the speakers yet. And all the tracks, but that's coming up. Two other things to be aware of. Our next meeting will be June 1st. We will be hybrid, topics to be determined. And then if you just want to go jump on a plane and enjoy a large international conference about Teams, I would recommend June 21st, 22nd, Commsverse London. That is always a heck of a party every year. So. Those are the events that are coming up. I believe, Michael, you're speaking at Commsverse, correct?
Both vNext and Verse, yeah.
Okay, what's your topic for both, I guess? Are they the same? I don't even know.
Yeah, they're both going to be around the account management for Teams rooms.
All right,
so
there you go. So Teams rooms, goodness. I'll be speaking at both as well, and mine will be about ChatGPT, Azure AI, and basically how we will all be unemployed soon. So it's going to be great. It'll be a real pick-me-up session. So A few other things. I always like to call out some new stuff that's out there. If you haven't seen it, you might not be just following Twitter 24/7 or checking out different forums. So if you are a big Teams shop and you've got lots of call queues and you don't know what those call queues look like, Martin
Hello?
Huser, he's an MVP.
Hey,
Hello,
how's it going? 1 second.
That's where we need a mute button. Hi, Jim. I'm going to mute you. Such coolness. Martin put together a PowerShell script that you run against your call queue, and it will spit out a huge, beautiful, visualized picture of that call queue. So if you're looking for some way to visually see them, documentation, share it with admin, whatever the case might be, this is a really good tool, and I highly recommend it. It works pretty darn well. Next thing, I'm calling this one out in case people have not seen this. Microsoft is going to change how they handle normalization rules for dialing. So if you're an old Skype for Business customer, you would know back in the old days, if you passed a phone number with a plus on the front, Skype just left it alone. It did nothing with it. No translation, it just passed it through. Well, Teams for the last 5+ years has always normalized those again, even though they had a plus on the front end. They've now decided 6 years into it that they're going to stop doing that. That, I'm sure, will not cause a problem for anyone in the grand scheme of things. Most of the time I see issues around this, it's around 911, just as an FYI. So they're going to start enforcing this in July. So if you haven't, I would tell you to, did it already.
I muted them.
Thank you. To check your rules, just make sure that if you are passing stuff with pluses, just take a look at it. I'd hate for stuff not to work for you. So that's in the message center. You should be aware of it. Another thing that's rolling out right now that I want to call out, because some people have complained about this for years, this is the profanity filter in live captions. That's right. You can now turn this on or off. So if you have live captions turned on and you want to see all of the swear words translated in real time, go turn this off. It's a great feature. I can tell you it does work really well, so feel free to turn it off and just test it out. There's nothing more enjoyable than just getting on a conference call and swearing for no reason. That's really what it boils down to. Offline meetings, I wanted to call this one out only because A, it's shocking it took this long, and B, it's the most confusing title ever when you see it in the message center. This is not a feature that allows you to have some sort of magic offline meetings in Teams. I don't know why they called it this. The marketing department just loses their minds. This allows you, I don't know if you realize this, but before when you were in Teams and you created a meeting, it always added a Teams meeting. Always. Even if you were putting like doctor's appointment, you had a Teams meeting. It was a great feature. You can now slide a button and make it so you can just make a normal meeting like you would in Outlook. It's a crazy concept, but they call that offline meetings. So if you hear the term offline meetings or you see it floating around, this is not some magical SBA feature or something like that. This is just, I don't know what else you'd call it, but it's not offline meetings. It's a dumb name. All right. I want to call out a couple of things real quick. If you haven't seen it, Microsoft Loop, it's kind of Teamsy related. Loop launched 2 weeks ago. Interesting note, I put the tech community link here. Loop by default is disabled for your tenants. You have to actually turn this on. Usually, Microsoft goes the other way. Everything is enabled by default. It's flipped the other way because there's some e-discovery and other type of compliance things that are not quite done yet in Loop, but they wanted Loop out the door right away, so they disabled it by default because you can't do all the normal discovery on it like you can. So that's there. Loop, I guess, if you've ever used Notion or any other cool online note-taking app. That's what it's very similar to. It's kind of like OneNote, but more for sharing. I've used it quite a bit recently, only because I find the sync of OneNote breaks like half a dozen times a day, it feels like, and this one always works. So, hey, there you go. And it would not be possible to have a conversation about Teams if the word Copilot didn't come up right now. So I'll hit this video. I don't think there's any sound. So Microsoft announced it. If you haven't seen the videos for Copilot, I would highly recommend checking them out. The general idea is Copilot's going to be everywhere, right? And what we don't know is how much they're going to charge for it. And you know there's going to be a charge. There's going to be a license. There's no way they're giving this away for free. At least I'd be shocked if they did. So there's that piece. But in Teams, you are going to have a chat assistant is the best way to describe it. I've seen this in person. This is way closer to reality. Like a lot of times Microsoft announces stuff and it's very vaporware-ish, right? For those who didn't know, I will be very honest on these calls all the time. So a lot of times they're very vaporware-ish. This one's not. This is like actually running at Microsoft. They already have 20 customers on this today. So this is a product that is out the door already. And the idea is that virtual assistant will do all sorts of very fun things for you. The favorites I saw in the demo were person comes in 20 minutes into a meeting and writes, what is the recap of this meeting? And it literally gives you a bullet point of everything that happened in that meeting as you walked in. So that was really cool. Other things like, they've got in the picture here, like what are the unresolved questions? Those ones are really interesting. And there's also kind of this tonation piece that goes with it. So the example that we saw was, they were rolling out feature XYZ, and it was, how does Mike feel about feature XYZ? And the robot, based on Mike's words, was able to come back and be like, Mike doesn't really think it's a great product. Maybe you should ask these follow-up questions for Mike, right? So it picks up a lot of information just through the transcript. So it's a pretty cool thing. And if you haven't seen it, it's obviously going across the entire board, right? This is Azure AI, ChatGPT, Magic. And if you haven't, I'm trying to find a good session out there, and I don't know if I'm the right person to do it, but if you haven't dug into it, there's a lot of stuff around their security Copilot stuff, which is absolutely fantastic, where it will take some of the logs and help you try to understand like intruder detection and stuff like that. So there's some really cool stuff they're doing with it, more than just like happy emoji faces and stuff like that. So that is, I think, everything I had. So Michael, I'm going to pass it to you. If I can find my screen to kill this thing. Here we go.
I don't think.
Is that showing up for you?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Well, hello everyone. I'm Michael Lamotang, and today I'll be talking through some of my experiences in the field, managing. Oh, already have a raised hand. Go ahead.
No. Fake raised hands.
They're so excited. They want to hear more about you, Michael. Where are you?
They're like,
where do you live?
Yeah. Yeah, but today I'll be talking about kind of my experiences in the field managing Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows using Intune and the new Teams Pro Management Portal. I actually heard someone recently call it the PMP portal from Microsoft, so we'll see if that sticks like tack, but we'll see how that goes. You can easily find me on Twitter at RealtimeUC, and if you're looking to reach out, feel free to hit me up via email at michael@teamsboss.com. I am a member of the O365A.com podcast team, and we post an episode every 2 weeks looking at updates, trends, and what to really know as an organization leveraging Microsoft 365. So we do interviews of Teams certified, vendors or third parties, as well as other MVPs and what they're, what interesting projects they're working on or what they're seeing, kind of where they are in the globe. In my day job, I'm an independent consultant and the principal product manager at teamsboss.com. Basically, it's a suite of products that came, based on struggles I was seeing organizations, as they look to operationalize, Teams, Teams Phone and stuff like that. So our management portal manages number inventory across all the telephony options. It removes the needs to use PowerShell in any way. And then really kind of enables organizations to support provision single or bulk users kind of at mass for Teams Phone. We've also built a bunch of custom solutions to tackle everything from account creation workflows for Microsoft Teams rooms and shared devices, and even like a WebEx Teams Spaces, whatever they name the product, a migrator of that collaboration piece of WebEx over to Microsoft Teams. So always building solutions to kind of fill in the gaps as organizations kind of jump into Teams. So some background before we jump in. So I am not an endpoint management guy in any way, but Teams basically forced me into this world. So first it was organizations deploying their first Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows, and I would get pulled in for escalation for not being able to get the room to sign in or get it fully functional. So that's dealing with web proxies, internal certificates, authorities or chains, DNS, network access control, VLANs, firewalls. Basically, it was always the network. But getting to go back to that legacy Link and Skype for Business kind of knowledge, knowing, hey, find the issue, tell the team what's wrong with it, and also tell them how to fix it. Then it was dealing with Teams on Android. So devices like phones, meeting rooms, and that whole world of pain with compliance and Android device management. And then I had a recent customer that basically had many Microsoft Teams rooms and many more planned. And they were really struggling, excluding these devices from all their traditional management, so group policies, SCCM, task lists, keeping up to date with the releases from Microsoft. Also, an overall push from the organization to remove reliance on on-prem services. So the Teams Room portal came out, and that checked a box, hey, we have update rings. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But really, it was kind of re-architecting how they were managing these devices. So this was kind of my journey into Intune for Windows, which is not blogged about too much. I feel like people see it as, hey, it's just like Windows management. So, hey, you could do that on an MTR, but it is pretty different. So first we went through an investigation. So, your legacy tools, GPO results, check what group policies are applying to these devices, check to see, one second, any windows open. Perfect. Then it was looking at what vendor tools they're using to manage it. They were using SCCM, so looking through the task list. How are they remotely managing these? They happen to be using remote desktop. What are the scripts that are being, pushed into these devices through startup, shutdown, log on, log off? Looking at the configurations they have, this organization had language requirements. So they had rooms that were in different languages. They had, depending on the site or the division, they had different backgrounds on their rooms. They had different configurations, dual screen, single screen. So all these settings we were kind of capturing to kind of figure out what policies we need. And then, of course, what installed programs they were throwing out, analytics agents, protection agents, whatever was being pushed. They shouldn't be pushing anything, but just doing a review of that. And then firewall rules. And then we have all the technical piece, but then also now looking at the organization. So how are they provisioning these devices? How are they managing and maintaining them? And then how are they supporting them remotely, locally? What were the typical issues? So getting all that information together and then coming up with a process. So kind of breaking it down into some buckets. So first was, how are we going to deal with the image? So, hey, we get a device that was on a shelf. Maybe it was on a shelf for 6 months, 3 months, maybe it's brand new. How do we roll that into our fleet? How do we actually enroll it into Intune and Azure AD? How do we deal with that pro management agent? So the agent that we have to install on it so that we can put it into the Teams Room Pro portal. How are we going to deal with local management? So logging in locally. How are we going to deal with remote login? And then some of those things that were specific for them. So different languages depending on where they're deploying. So, hey, we're deploying some rooms in Quebec. We need to make sure that the screen has French, or, that, they can get charged for that. So some interesting rules for language in this case. And then also the Skype settings. So imaging, we basically had, hey, two options. We can grab the image off the vendor's site, or we can build our own image. The organization had no interest in maintaining their own image. They wanted it turnkey. So we went, okay, you put a vendor image on a key. Worst case, it's out of date, over, the next 48 hours, the device will update, Windows updates will happen. That's a pretty low risk factor. If we want to make sure that it's current so we can put it right into service, we make sure we grab the latest image. We looked at Windows Configuration Designer. Some issues with that. The wizard tries to give you a naming convention, but they didn't want to use that naming convention. It didn't align with theirs, and they had different naming conventions, so they didn't want to have different packages. The token used to enroll into Intune was only valid for up to 6 months. So then they're like, oh, we have to now go back into our notes, figure out how to repackage it, make sure all the legacy USB keys have been updated because it's going to fail. And they're like, we have no interest in this. Okay. So when we looked at enrollment, we have existing rooms and we had new rooms that were coming. So, hey, all those existing rooms are already hybrid joined. How do we flip them over to Azure Active Directory join? And then how do we have a process for those new rooms? So unfortunately, there isn't a supported way to move from a domain join Microsoft Teams room to remove it from the domain and then Azure AD join it. So you have to actually re-image it. So, hey, we have the vendor image and we've already planned for that. So now we're going to re-image these legacy rooms, take them out and put them back in. Key thing is make sure you delete the AD object and sync, because otherwise you're going to have two objects in Intune and some strange things happen with that. Capture the license key, because you may not have the license key that was issued by the vendor or put into the image. And then you Azure AD join it. On the Intune side, scope tags, very powerful. I didn't have to go too deep into this, but basically the Intune team was able to allow the AV integrator to have all the right permissions to do the workflow and nothing more. They can only see the devices that they were supposed to manage. They can only edit in the areas that they were supposed to take care of, and everything was kind of locked down outside of that. That does cause some issues. If, hey, the room isn't enrolled yet and we want to see why it's failed, well, you might not be able to see that based on these scope tags. So great way to RBAC, but also does put you in a box that if you're not into that box yet, it could cause some issues. This organization allowed any regular user to enroll a device into Intune, but it had to be corporate owned. And so this was a matter of capturing all the hardware hashes of these devices, and going forward, they can get a list of hashes from the vendor for going for new devices, but they use an SCCM package or a GPO to push gather this hash from their legacy devices. There's a great script in the PowerShell gallery, which is strange because normally you install a module, but get-windows autopilot info. Basically, by default, it'll output a CSV with the hash, but there's actually some parameters on there that you can do online. So basically, you can run this script and it'll take the hash and put it right into your Intune, and you can actually tag it with a group tag and tag it with a computer name. So it'll actually do the computer name. So you can kind of simplify some of those interactions with the out-of-box experience, which leads to group tags. Group tags by far was the key for us in this scenario, because we came up with, hey, all the pieces that we need to apply and all the different personas of rooms. And based on that, we came up with tags. And these tags were something as simple as, hey, it's a Microsoft Teams room production. I mean, it was abbreviated, but it would be like MTR, prod, single English or whatever. And that'd be single screen English. So we know what language pack to push to it. We know, set it to single monitor, what background image to apply to it. And hey, do we turn on the preview features or not based on prod and depth? So that tag we can actually use on dynamic group membership in Azure AD. And so we basically populated Azure groups with the tags of the devices. So now we can say, hey, we want to apply this Skype settings XML to this group of devices. We just apply it to the Azure AD, or we basically use the assignments using the Azure AD groups. One thing to note, when you enroll a device into Intune, whoever enrolled it becomes the primary user. And so we had to make sure that you remove that, because then you'll hit the limits of how many devices a single person can enroll. So if you have like a shared account for, no one uses shared account, so we won't say that. But if you have an 8 integrator named account, and they go in and deploy 20 rooms, they can easily hit the limit of rooms that they can enroll. So that flipping of the device to shared mode, basically removing the primary user, is a critical step. So right now we do need to deploy the Pro Management Agent. So this is an MSI. You can find it at aka.ms/service portal agent MSI. But basically, this is the little agent that allows you to enroll it into that Pro portal that we were going to talk about in the future. That agent hopefully will go away. So hopefully this is a temporary fix. And so to deploy this, you have to actually, this is where where I found Intune being fun, is everything in Intune is all over the place. There's not like a single point of glass. And I had the Intune admin basically tell me that Intune is like a mile wide, but an inch deep. And I was like, okay, I get where you're going with this. So as we go through these different pieces of the puzzle, they're in completely different places within Intune. So if I go into my Intune portal, hey, device registration. Hey, we need these devices to be corporate owned before we can register them. Let's put the hash into the portal. If we go into devices, and then if we go under Windows, then we go under Windows enrollment, and then we go under this devices section, this is where we upload those hashes. You can't just manually add it in. Like if you go under add, there is no add, so you can't just key it in. You have to actually import the CSV file for these. So that script I talked about exports it into that format. But there's this group tag. And so this is the example where I have like Azure Active Directory join, Microsoft Teams room, single display English. This group tag is not very visible in anywhere else in Intune. So you have to look and see, okay, do we have the right tag on this device? And that's why it's getting this group membership, and that's why it's getting these policies. If we go under apps and then Windows, and we go under Windows apps and add, there's a whole bunch of different app types. So to deploy an MSI, we would pick a line of business app. And then we have the ability to reference that MSI file that we were talking about for the Pro agent. That critical thing here is that Pro agent does update kind of automatically, similar to Teams. So you want to make sure you're not checking for app version. So you might be deploying an MSI that's old, it'll get put on the machine, and then the machine will update on its own. So don't keep forcing the old version back on the device. Hopefully that goes away with the agent being part of the build. Next one is, okay, let's deal with local administrators. So, hey, we can use a template within Intune. Again, this is in a totally different area. This is under endpoint security, account management, and then you have local user group settings. So basically we can say the administrator group on the device gets this Azure AD group of users. We'll update the membership versus replace, so that if there was other groups that were putting their admins on there for operational support or whatever, we're not blowing those away. So this is just another little package to do one little task within the kind of workflow. The next one was remote desktop. So this was basically using devices, configuration profile, Windows 10 or later, a template, endpoint protection, and then Windows Defender Firewall. And then in there, we just basically put a rule for 3389 TCP to allow that those connections for a remote desktop. And then in the same area, but you can't do in the same policy, there's an admin template that you can turn on RDP on the DOS. So again, you're not able to kind of group these things together. They're all in kind of separate areas. my device isn't Azure AD joined, so when I was testing, I couldn't RDP into it for the life of me. I thought I was crazy. Waited 24 hours. I was like, hey, I'm using Azure AD/VPN. It's not working. I found out that because my device wasn't joined to the same directory, I had to modify an RDP file and add these two parameters. So enable CRED SSP, SPS support, and then authentication level. So if you ever run into that, hopefully you don't, there's just a couple pieces that you have to add to an RDP call. Language, this was an interesting one. So they were doing this manually before, so they would install a room, go into the room and try and change the language, and then, before they put it into service. Now we can say, hey, this room is put into the French group or whatever the case is, and then we could push a PowerShell script to it. So this one is under Devices, Windows, PowerShell. And so, hey, traditional PowerShell script, we just create the file, upload it. Make sure you're doing 64-bit if you're doing any of the language stuff. It fails if it's 32-bit. And then I had to go through some different iterations to figure out how to change the languages in all places. So there's installing the language that you require. There's setting the system preferred UI. There's setting the Windows local. And then there's a script within the MTR to actually apply the language change within the Teams app. So there's a script launch PS1 file that you can pass parameters to in the install directory. And then there's a apply current language, a region language. So you can push this down to the device, and then the device, once it reboots, will come into that different language. So you can push Spanish or whatever you want onto that device. Skype settings, there's a whole rabbit hole for this. I'm not going to go too deep into this just for the interest of time, but in this case, hey, let's do some custom backgrounds. There's a template I've included. All these slides I've also uploaded, so you can grab them from wherever Richard stores the recordings and everything like that. But basically, there's a template so you can put your own company branding on these rooms. And then from the Skype settings, there's a whole article on all the different things you can change. In this example, we're basically changing the theme to custom and referencing a wallpaper. So we have our XML that we want to push to the device. How do we get to the device? So basically, we have to package, the wallpaper, the Skype settings.xml, and basically a batch file. So hey, the batch file is pretty simple. DOS commands, make a directory, copy the things into the right directory so that the Teams room will reboot and pull those properties. The way to package this in Intune is basically we wrap the zip file. Basically, it's a folder of content, and then we zip it using Intune Win app utility.exe. It's published on GitHub, but basically you reference the directory, you say what is the script that will do all the work, and then it'll output an image, somewhere almost like an MSI. So it's basically an encrypted zip file. So how we reference this, again, in a totally different area, you go under apps, Windows, Windows apps, and then it's going to be Win32 apps. And then you reference the Intune package, and then you say, what is the command that will launch the installation? And then put in a command that will remove the installation. So basically it's a secondary batch file that deletes the image file, deletes the XML, and then removes the folder. And then you have to create a detection rule. So the detection rule says, how do we know that this install was successful? In my case, I'm like, hey, I'm putting a wallpaper image in a directory. I'll just check to see if it exists. If it exists, I know it's successful. And then if it doesn't, it will remove. So that's how I tackle that. And so you can do some pretty interesting things with that XML. You could actually, have a PowerShell command that, queries like CyberArk or Key Vault and pulls credentials down and inputs it into the XML. And then when the device reboots, it'll pull all that information in, auto sign in, and then blow away the credentials from that file. So you can do some full provisioning playing with that Skype settings.xml. It's still Skype settings, even though it's a Teams room. I'm not sure they'll ever change the name of it. So that was on the Intune side. So basically, like I said, it's a mile wide and inch deep. So you're creating all these pieces in different places. It doesn't, it's not very easy to like, hey, I'm looking at this room, see all the parts that apply to this one room. You kind of have to go and follow its journey through the different areas in Intune. Hopefully that changes, or maybe I'll build something. But right now, it does seem like you can do everything you need to from Intune to manage that room. Any questions on Intune before we jump into the Pro Portal?
I have two questions.
Absolutely.
So at the beginning, you were talking about different images, right? You can use the vendor image, you can pull the one from Microsoft. Is there really a difference? Is there one I should prefer? Does it matter at the end of the day?
The reason why we went with the vendor image is we didn't want someone to have to go through documentation on how to build a new image when there is a new build, right? So, and then dealing with all these keys that have different versions and stuff like that. So the vendor image seemed to be the easiest because, hey, we know it's kind of out of box. And then if the normal update process, the nightly reboots applies, we know that what that end state will look like. As we, if you build out your own custom image, of course, you can input, different aspects of your workflow into that. But then someone's going to have to live and maintain that as for the life of those rooms. So we thought it would just be from a resource point of view is, hey, we have the expert today, but we might not have an expert tomorrow, or hey, we might outsource pieces of it and now we have to redo the process. So for them to standardize on, hey, we just go to the vendor, pull the image, and if it's outdated, Microsoft will handle the updating. If we want to make sure it's current, we can just pull the new image.
Yeah. So James asks, is there a roadmap for the MTR AD join to Azure AD join to be supported, or do we think the reimage is what we're always going to have to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We tried pushing the global black belts for Microsoft Teams rooms on any ways around it or any hacks or non-supported ways, and they were just like, no, reimage. So I think if you look at it, you take a room and who knows what group policies and what was applying to it, and then you remove that room from the directory, some of that stuff is still going to be there. And there's no real way from a Windows OS to clean out everything that was pushed to it. It'll stop pulling, but it might be in the state that, hey, we joined these rooms 2 years ago and had this configuration, or we had this room that was just joined and we're in the process of changing our process. And it has a different set of policies. So for the organization, they were like, we're not going to go through the pain of trying to figure out all the different ways to what it will look like at the end state of dropping from the domain. We'll just start from a new image. And so the process is pretty quick. You get a USB key with that image. It may take half an hour to push that rebuild. And then now that it goes into Intune, it's like rename your PC, join it to Intune, and then all of a sudden Intune throws all the different pieces at it seamlessly behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I would even say, if you've tried to take even a Windows 11 desktop, right, and move it from one domain to the other, that isn't easy, right? So if you try to think about that from a room perspective, it's even worse.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'll go for it.
I was just going to say part of the struggle of getting a room joined to a group, a domain is, hey, call these policies to redo the auto sign in and launch and the Skype user and all that kind of stuff. And so when you remove it from the domain, you might lose those pieces again. And now you're in a state where it doesn't auto launch, and now you're repairing it.
All right. So this I saw was in the message center. This semi-related to what you're talking about. It's super related. So Windows 11 is going to be rolling out to MTR devices that support it here soon, right? I think it's June-ish, if I remember correctly. Maybe June, July, somewhere in that ballpark. It's probably early. Do we know anything that people need to be aware of? Or do we just sit back and just pray that the device updates successfully and move on with our lives?
Yeah, there isn't even the documentation on which rooms are not supported. So I think it's still pretty early on. The great thing with all the Intune stuff that we've been, kind of talking about is it's Windows 10 and on. So for the most part, these things shouldn't change. But the overall, like downloading Windows 11 over the internet to 1,000 devices that may not be on the corporate network, so they're pulling over the internet. All those things are kind of yet to see what's going to look like.
Yeah, so for sure, if you have a lot of MTRs deployed, right, with Windows, I would make sure that you keep an eye on that message center, right, when they start doing it. I think, I started looking at the list, and I mean, obviously, if the underlying device doesn't support Windows 11, like if you've got some old Logi docks, right, with the old Surface Pro 4 in it, good news, those aren't updating, so yay for us. But just something to be aware of, that it is coming. And the note is also, if the device doesn't support Windows 11, they are going to upgrade Windows 10 to like whatever the latest H2 whatever version. So those updates are coming. So,
but that also marks the first time that a Microsoft Teams room may have an end of life, right? So now, hey, we have a Logitech dock or the old Surface Pro ones, and now we can only go up to Windows 10, and now we have a timer on the OS supportability.
Correct. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. All right. Any other questions? Jason asked, we're talking about rooms, advantages, MTRW versus MTRA. So that's Windows versus Android for those who aren't on the abbreviation game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit of Windows just by default is the kind of extensible USB performance or USB kind of stack, right? So we can pretty much take any AV peripheral, plug it into a Windows device. So we have a USB. It might not be certified, but the Windows stack is going to be able to load the drivers and use that peripheral. On the Microsoft Teams room on Android, most of them are a collaboration bar type form factor. Camera, microphone, speakers, all in kind of in a bar. There is some new devices like the Roommate, and Poly has one, and when we see what happens with Cisco, that they can plug in peripherals. But I think that peripheral list is going to be a smaller list than what you could traditionally do with Windows. The other thing that I see on Android is just we haven't really seen how far in the future an Android OS will be supported. So, hey, these devices were shipped with Android 7 or 11 or 15 or whatever that is, and maybe the vendor will support upgrading it 2 or 3 versions in the future, maybe not. But there'll be a point where now security in your organization saying, hey, we're not going to support anything under Android 20 or something like that. And that's going to say, okay, these devices, phones and rooms may not or may need exclusions or whatever that looks like. So I think from an OS point of view, until recently with the Windows 10, 11 stuff, Windows, has a much longer life cycle.
All right.
Perfect. So jumping into PMP, I'm not sure if I'll use that acronym ever again after this call, but the Pro Management Portal. So this was, hey, an organization had all these rooms. They were using standard licensing. They were now moved to the new Microsoft Teams Room Pro license. Part of that Pro license includes the management portal. And so they were really thinking, how do we maximize this? Oh, sorry, was there a question in the room? I missed that.
No, there wasn't.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So kind of walking through that workflow for the Pro portal is, make sure you set up your update rings. So this is the way to control what updates apply to what group of rooms. What groups do you want to create? So, hey, we're going to maybe delegate administration of rooms in our Minnesota office versus our New York office. Also, do we want to have alerts? Because now we're thinking about operations. Hey, this room has a camera unplugged, or this room is offline, or maybe this room is not meeting best practice. We can do email alerts, or we can do ServiceNow integration. And then right now, there is no PowerShell module, and there's no published API to work with the Pro Management Portal. So every time you add a room, all these steps are manual. So if we think about that, we deploy the agent, we can push that through Intune. We have to go into the portal and enroll the room once it shows up. We have to assign the update ring, and we have to assign the group. So if we take a look at the Pro portal, I'm just kind of walking through that. Open these. So under your settings general, this is where you can set up your alerting. So, hey, we want to just send email alerts whenever there's an incident detected. We We have the ability to create ServiceNow integration. I spent a lot of fun in this section trying to get this to work. So basically, you need to figure out what mandatory fields are needed in ServiceNow, and then how you map them back to this integration. So that's for both creating tickets and auto closing tickets. So a little fun there. On the role side, you can create custom roles. So you can say, hey, we want to delegate to our AV company the ability to manage these rooms in this location. What I found is these roles that you can create are always scoped. So the out-of-the-box roles apply to any room in the tenant. If you create your own custom role that says, hey, you can only onboard a room or view the usage statistics, there's a requirement to put that room or apply this RBAC role to a group, which means if you think about it, hey, we want the AV integrator to install the room, enroll the room, and manage the room. Well, if they have an RBAC that says they can only manage rooms in this group, there's a gap of when the room shows up in the portal and assigning that room to a group before they can manage it. So that was a nuance that we found because we wanted to allow the admin not to mess with any settings, but just to enroll the rooms. And we couldn't create a custom role to cover that. We had to have the admins of the portal do one step so then they can get into the RBAC role. On the update side, so there is these rings. So I'm not going to add a ring. So with the rings, there's basically, let's see how it works. So with the rings, you could basically defer updates not longer than 60 days. So you can say, and I typically will just use the rings that are built in. So basically it's 3 tiers. Hey, staging might be, IT devices that, are IT friendly. General might be most of your rooms, and then executive will be like those executive CIO, CEO type rooms. And then you can say, okay, we're gonna start updating at this date. We're gonna give it X days to roll out to all the devices in that group. And then we're gonna test for a certain duration, and then we're gonna start the next ring. And so that combination of when we're gonna start, how long we're gonna run that update in that ring, and then how long we're gonna wait before going to the next ring, that whole process across the 3 rings can't exceed 60 days. So in this case, we have, if I go into this executive, you can see this completion time is in 21 days. So I can edit staging to say, I'm going to say we're going to test for 10 days. And you can see all down the line, it's adjusting that time. So as long as this total doesn't exceed 60, you can say, hey, we're going to do a large testing. And then maybe at the end of the ring, we're going to say, before the 60 days, update our executive room. So this does allow you to kind of control which rooms are getting updates and kind of what that order is. So when you enroll a room, it'll show up in this kind of section of rooms. And then what you have to do is open the room. And what you'll see is once you install the agent, it won't actually be enrolled. They'll have a little button that you have to click to say enroll. Once you enroll it, it'll go and check all the, hey, are you using the default password? Do you have the right drivers installed? Is it up to date? Is there any peripheral issues? Then you're able to go into the update rings, change the ring. You're able to go under groups and change the group. So all this is manual, but then once those kind of couple activities are done, then that room kind of gets into that operational aspect of being monitored through the service, creating tickets or email alerts, updating based on your rings. And then just kind of showing that complexity of the update rings, kind of breaking it down. So you have basically there are just rings that kind of build on top of each other. And this is why I don't create additional rings, because then you're also making the time that each ring is now much smaller. So I think 3 works. You can't delete them, so you might as well use them versus trying to adjust them to not be used. Okay. And then all of that, there's always ways to improve. So some of the things I don't have documented here, but there is a PowerShell module called AAD internals. Fantastic set of hacks to working with tokens and things like that. And so you could technically use the script to use an enrollment token and then automate the Azure AD join enrollment process and the naming and the group tag and all that versus manually interacting that. And then the other one is, how I mentioned, you have to convert your room to a shared mode, so remove the primary user. There's a PowerShell module that you can use to delete the primary user and filter it down for rooms and stuff like that. So instead of someone going in and saying remove primary user. And that's all I had. And I know that was a lot of content, but I wanted to make sure I got through it. And the slides are uploaded into OneDrive. So any questions on this journey?
I have two, and then I'll read off.
Always have two?
Yeah, I just have two. I have more, but I'm going to stick with my two. So if I'm new, right, I'm a noob to Teams. You made this comment about standard versus pro. Can you give me like the 2-minute rundown of that change? Because that was fairly recent.
Yeah, so last year, Microsoft announced that the Teams Room standard and premium licensing were going away. So standard license was your typical license, similar to like an E3, E5, had all the license pieces that you needed to get a resource account to sign into a Microsoft Teams Room and have all the Teams features. That license, there was two licenses. There was standard and premium. And so standard had everything you need to get that room up and running. Premium had that pro portal that we showed, as well as a kind of a managed service on top of that where you can interact with Microsoft support. Microsoft basically is combined those two licenses. So Pro came out as the new license going forward. There is no more standard, there's no more premium. And so you get all the features that were in standard, all the new stuff that Microsoft's building for rooms like intelligent camera or IntelliFrame, intelligent microphones, all the things around front row. As well as that pro portal, you just don't get that managed service. So that's the new license going forward. There is a basic license out there that's free. I don't talk about it at all because I feel that the license removes features that you need, like remote management, all the cool features that Microsoft's releasing. The license has a limit of 25 and your tenant for free. And that license limits to single screen, doesn't include the pro portal, doesn't include Azure P licensing, so you can't exclude the devices from conditional access if you're using conditional access. So for me, that basic license is not existing, and just plan and budget around the Teams Room Pro license.
So you answered my second question. So the one note in there that Michael made, right? You are limited to 25. It is a hard cap. You can beg and plead and do all those things. They ain't gonna give you more. So there's just no reason to use it personally. Like, get rid of it. Don't use it. Don't use free. Pay the, what is it, 40 a month? Question mark. I think it's something in that ballpark. It sounds expensive, but it's a room, right? Like, you probably want that. If someone unplugs the camera, you probably want to know, right? Like, that's,
I mean, if you look at the room, then that in your training center, right? Like, you have those Shure mics on the ceiling. Like, this room is an expensive install, and
right?
So,
yeah, the $40 ain't gonna kill you after you spend 10 grand on equipment. Just saying. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, the one screen is big, Bruce. Right. So if you've got any dual screen devices, you have to, right? And if you want to do anything like the coordinated join features, all of that requires Pro, right? Coordinated join. If you've got a device and you want to like bring in a Surface Hub at the same time into a meeting, all that stuff, that's all Pro as well. So.
Yeah, and I think the problem is Microsoft's kind of promoting it like, hey, we have free licensing, and then, hey, use it as part of your pilot. But when you pilot a room and just getting the equipment either seated or purchasing it, you want the full feature set. You want to see the experience. You want to use all the features of the room. So putting a license that limits that right out of the gate as part of your pilot is not a good thing. You can get the Pro license on trial, 25 licenses for 30 days. You can extend that 30 days up to 60 days by putting your credit card in. It won't transact or anything like that. But you can get licenses to cover your pilot without having to purchase them, and instead going to basic.
Great.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Michael. Again, we'll have all this stuff posted along with the slides. I'm going to get really fancy now since I'm recording this stuff. I'll probably actually put it on YouTube with the slides. Like, oh my God. It's almost going to make this like an official users group as opposed to Richard's just sideshow calamity. All right. So next, we are going to hear from our friends at Jabra. So let me
This thing's shared.
give us one moment here as I try to get the slideshow up. Oh, I need to share my screen. First, share my screen. Then I'll get the slideshow up. And then I got to move the camera. All right. So
You there?
room controls, and you need this. Sure. And then I can move the camera right over there if you want.
Yeah, it's okay.
Or you want to
No, I
sit
can
here?
show. Oh, your controller there. Yep, cool.
Good.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Get my crap out of
Well, I won't bore you with my 300 slide deck, but
Okay.
we'll go from there. So those of you who are remote, like it seems like everybody is this day, they always say 40% of the people don't want to go back to offices. I think it might be more, but here we are. One of the pieces that we're talking about with Jabra, for those of you know, we've had our Evolve series out for years. We've had our Speak, our Puck, since 2010. But we're all changing basically how we work. We're no longer just in an office. We're having different challenges with concentration, audio, things like that. So we've come out with some new series. Then something we just announced this last week at Enterprise Connect. So we'll kind of talk about those a little bit. But now we talk about the Evolve 2 series. Is a line of headsets, both mono, stereo, earbuds that are out there now. The Evolve 2 earbuds, all certified USB-A, USB-C functionality. You can use a mono, stereo, dual connect functionality. It has the active noise cancellation. It's a hybrid active noise cancellation, so you can adjust it. I use it mowing the lawn and everything else, and they work really great. So cuts down that background noise as well. The new one that we just announced this week is called the Evolve 265 Flex. The big thing with these is really designed for that true hybrid worker. These things fold up basically almost flat and drop into your laptop bags. Again, has all the advanced hybrid ANC technology in it. It's got the clear voice microphone technology with the beamforming mics that cut down the dogs barking, the kids screaming, the coffee shop noise, things along those lines. And again, those long talk times out there. And then again, dual connect options for both connecting to your PCs, mobile devices, things along those lines. The other one is called the Evolve 255. This is available in a mono or stereo wearing style. Again, this one has the active noise cancellation out there. Designed new ear cups to make them more comfortable so you're not getting the pressure on your ears for wearing them all day long. Getting long talk times, dual connect, things like that. And then there's called the Evolve 250, which is basically the same wearing style, mono or stereo, as the 55, but it's a corded USB device, okay? Again, with ANC technology in it. But one of the key things here is now it does have Bluetooth in the headset. So if you wanted to be plugged into your PC but still have your mobile phone connected and be able to take calls back and forth, you can pair your mobile phone and your tablet to the headset. And then we talk ANC, and I kind of look at it as, folks got confused on noise cancellation on microphones. What did it mean? They started confusing noise cancellation with ANC. Well, ANC, we're going to confuse you some more. There's actually multiple levels of ANC, all right? You can do it via software. You can do it with chipsets, things like that. So we really kind of talk about it in different forms that are out there from the type of device. So the more premium device, the higher level ANC and the adjustability you have on it versus just a constant static of that hybrid frequency. So we really have a couple things in here with the ANC as well as with the microphone technologies. Every one of the boom neck technology has the clear voice beamforming mics within them. The 40s, the 50s, 55s, 65 Flex, 75, 85 all have the microphone boom controls, so I can mute and unmute. I can answer an in call just by moving the microphone boom. And then the 65, 75, and 85 all have the hideaway boom, so I can actually flip the boom up, keep it hidden, and actually use external mics to talk to if you're in a quiet spot. But if you want to have the best noise cancellation, meet the open office standards that Microsoft sets, the boom needs to be down. A couple other things in the video side of the world, which we're all doing different ways and trying to do better things with it. But really, we talk about our foundation of it. It was the 180-degree view, as well as with the audio within all the devices, whether it be the bar, or even all the way down to the personal camera and the P20, has the microphone technologies already built into them. The PanaCast 50 room systems, the BYOD device has been out for a number of years. Again, all teams certified structure, but we also have the full room system, so you can actually have it bundled, have the compute device, Windows-based compute device, as well as the touchscreen at the desk. And then we just announced the Android bar, which will start shipping June 15th. Again, all Microsoft certified under the MTRs. And we really talk about the field of view, Microsoft version of the rooms is where we're playing at. There one's the personal video camera. This isn't your standard webcam, all right? So it's got the 4K cameras within it. It's got all the auto light sensing technology in it. The people, basically follows you as you move back and forth within your space, or standing up and sitting down. And the big thing is all the processing with this device is done on the camera. So it's got the AI technology built into the device. There's a feature coming very soon that the background blur within that will actually be done on the camera. It doesn't drive out to your CPU. It doesn't drive out to the cloud. So one of the big things is security. So if you have executives that worry about what's in the background, or people are doing product development, what's on the boards behind them, that can be blurred at the camera level. In that intelligent light, we kind of talk about that as you got light in the background, all of a sudden somebody's face goes black. You're not going to get that black vision. You're going to see it. You'll even see it in almost basically a dark room. You'll be able to see yourself as well without any special lighting going on. And the other stuff is the new Speak 2 series that was just recently announced. We're all familiar with the puck. We've upped the game a little bit and changed it and done the updates to a new face of it. Really 3 different products. The Speak 240, which is a USB only device, and it's got the USB A and C on it. Then the Speak 255 has the USB as well as has Bluetooth options on it. And then the 275 is the same thing, Bluetooth and USB A, USB-C already on the cord. Couple key things with that 75, it does have microphone sensing technology. So if I start moving too far away from the speakerphone, it'll actually turn yellow instead of green to let you know that I'm not being picked up very well. So you can move closer. They all have 4 different beamforming microphones in them for better reception as a whole. In the past, we only had 1 microphone in the Speak series. So the big thing, if you're here, you can touch and feel it and see it. And somebody's going to get a lucky one, so it'll be kind of cool. The sound is unbelievable on them. They also have an IP67 rating, all the water, dust type functionality, and different fields. It's all fabric covers on them as well. Kind of future-proof the devices as you hold. The other thing is kind of cool with the 75s. If you actually have the Sound Plus app for your mobile phones and tablets, you can now manage the device from your Sound Plus app on your mobile devices. You don't need Jabra Direct on your PC to do it any longer. And the fast pair functionalities. Just to show a couple examples, those are used the Speak 750 to 710, kind of the differences of the feature functions within them. Again, I go back to it, it's more microphones, beamforming mic technology, so it's picking up you better, and you're going to hear even a higher level of audio from what you experienced in the past devices. Got over 9 million speaks in the market out there. So we set the market standard at that point. The 510, very similar there. I didn't show the 410 because we actually ended up manufacturing the old 410s. So, but the Speak 240 will be the replacement for the 410. That's it. That was quick. If there's questions, anybody has any evaluation pieces that are going on there, get a hold of John or myself, and we're glad to help you out.
I mean, I saw the Speak doesn't support Skype for Business anymore. I'm kind of devastated.
How did you remove that feature? Like, for the 6 people who are still
Yeah, you
using
want to
it.
use it? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say. For the 6 people still on Skype for Business, they are probably devastated. Let me go find. All right, cool. So yeah, if you have any questions about the Jabra stuff, it is fantastic. That is my go-to device. I'm a dual ear Jabra user. Haven't been for years. All right, so we're going to dive into some what's new in Microsoft Teams. 1 or 2 things were announced over the past couple of weeks, shockingly. So let's get into it. The marketing team at Microsoft, they are terrible. They don't know how to name anything, and their run of bad naming continues. So if you're using the Microsoft Teams client right now, know that is now officially named Classic Teams. And if you use the new Teams client, it's called New Teams. And that is some original naming right there. Good stuff for sure. But this video, if you've not seen this video, I'm going to hit the play button. It is pretty wild, the difference between the two. So we'll kind of talk about what's different, how you can turn this on and all that kind of fun stuff in your environment. But you'll notice on the one side, the new Teams is done. It loaded the channel or the chat. Everything's great. It was wonderful. And Classic Teams is still grinding away there. There we go. So from a launch time, new Teams is really, really fast, right? And you'll notice the placeholders, channel switching, all of those kind of things. It is a very different experience between the two. So let's talk about what it is, how it works, what the future looks like, because this is all going to change. All right, we got it. All right, so what's happening under the hood? And it's really big. It really is. So Classic Teams, right? Everything's a web client, right? That's the first thing. It's not a native client. It never has been, right? The current Classic Teams that you're using today, it is based on top of Electron, which is a cross-platform base. So when Microsoft started the Teams journey now 6+ years ago, they said to themselves, we're going to use Electron because then we can put it on Windows, we can put it on iOS and Android and Linux, and we put it everywhere. Well, the problem is about 2 years into it, iOS, they figured out Electron on iOS was terrible, so they went to the native client. Then on Android, they found out it was terrible, so they went to native client. On the Mac, they went native. So now you're in this world where the only client that's using Electron is Windows, of all craziness. It's kind of weird and funny how it's turned out. They also moved away from Angular to React. For those who are nerds, it's faster, it's easier, quicker, all that kind of fun stuff. But there are a couple of big things under the hood, right? They re-architected how they're doing the video. So how the video is getting pushed to your device is way more efficient. The second one is probably the big one. Today, if you ever bring up like Network Monitor on Classic Teams, it is continually polling. Like it is just asking for updates constantly because there is no push notifications in it. So they've moved to a push notification system. It is 2023. We finally got into the real world. Good job, Teams. So no longer is it constantly asking for stuff. And then there's unbelievably great multi-account, multi-tenant. I'll show you that actually here in a second. So what's new in Teams? These are the things they've highlighted, right? It'd be able to find stuff, some group chat avatars, auto replies, all those kind of fun things. I'll just show it because I have been running the new teams for quite a while now. So new teams looks a lot like old teams. I know that's a shock. It's not radically different, right? The great thing is there are certain things. So anytime I hit, if I'm in a message, like if I'm in a message with Michael and I try to do a find, if my computer works, work you monster. Okay, it worked a minute ago. Well, it used to do finds really cool. Now it's stopped. That's good. Wake up! There's some bugs in the new Teams client, just as an FYI. So, Testing, that's the old one. Work. Welcome to yeah, exactly. Thank you, Michael. Well, there used to be a searching button that actually functioned here, but apparently it's not going to work for me because I wanted to talk about it. So yay me. So typically when you hit Control F, you actually get a find box on the side, and it does actual finds for you, unlike the old world, but it doesn't. So whatever. Multi-tenant support. So current teams, you can only be logged into a team at one time or into an account at one time. So you'll see that I'm in the meeting here. And not only do I have multi-tenant support, I can also multi-tenant switch while I'm in calls or in meetings. So I physically have just changed my account. So even though I'm logged in the background still at T2M, I just jumped over to my personal Teams account, right? And you'll also notice if you've ever had to deal with the horrors of switching from account to account, you'll have seen how fast that was. In the old world, right, it physically logged you out and logged you back into the Teams client. Now it is a simple click and you bounce around. The other big thing is in terms of notifications, everything is now built into the Windows notifications. So no longer do you have like a separate notification tools inside of Teams and you got stuff in Windows and you're trying to deal with them side by side. Now you have a singular place, you manage it through Windows notifications. It's a unified experience and it's fantastic. So that's a real nice add. And what you'll notice is up at the top, you're going to get this cute button that says New Teams, right? You can't switch from New Teams to Classic Teams in the middle of a call. That is a step too far, right? But I can click that toggle and go back between the two if I need to for whatever reason. New Teams does have some limitations. Not all the apps are there yet, right? I logged in today. I don't think this is in the public one, so close your eyes. I promise I'm, accidentally showing Ring 1.5 right now. But I have some additional apps in here. But you'll notice I don't have the store, for example, right? So there's still some things that are missing from this experience, right? The great news is if you want to enable this, it's really easy for you to do this in your organization. So you simply need to go to the Teams Admin Center to turn it on, and then you do have some requirements from a computer perspective. It's got to be Windows 10 or later. You need to have a version of the Teams client, and you need to have an updated version of Office. Those are kind of the big items. So if I were to come into my Teams Admin Center and blow away that silly message, finally close this, please load. Do it. There we go. So inside of Teams, team update policies, I just modified my global policy. It will yell at you if you try to do this and tell you, are you really sure you want to do this for everyone? But you'll notice right here where I have used new Teams client, I can set it from not enabled users can choose to Microsoft control. So you can create a new policy, assign it to a handful of people to test with, play with it, get used to it. Know that, this is coming, right? Like you're not going to be able to opt out of new Teams at some point in time. They're just going to move you. So you might as well get used to it, right? The joke is they'll move it when there's feature parity, knowing that they'll leave behind a bunch of features that don't come along. But feature parity is kind of the joke in itself. So that's new Teams. It is quite different in terms of just user experience using it, all that kind of fun stuff. So public preview is now. And probably by the end of the year, you'll start kind of getting more forced into it, but kind of play with it, see what's out there. The second thing that rolls out, and this came out with both classic teams and new teams, it's like new Coke, is this idea of Channels 2.0. So if you've not seen this before, this went out in public preview almost 6 months ago now. This is going to roll out general availability in June, all right? So everyone gets this new experience. Enjoy. So if you've used Teams before, presumably you have, you're familiar that when you are in a channel, new messages are at the bottom of it, and you scroll down. They have now flipped it, just like any type of social media app, right? If you think about Facebook or Twitter or Yammer or whatever the case is, the new stuff is always at the top. So here on my screen, I can see I've got this new post at the top. I have all the new messaging. And then off to the right-hand side, then I've got all this kind of cool channel experience, right? So if I go back to my team and I pick a channel, I'll pick this one right here. So up here at the top, I can start my new post, right? I can get all that kind of fun and exciting stuff. Now, what's interesting is, and you're going to start seeing this real quick, that there is a different experience between classic teams and new teams with Channels 2.0. Just to make the world super confusing, there is a difference between the two. So in the screenshot, right, there was like that panel off to the side. You'll notice I don't have it in the the new Teams client. It's not available yet. So you're going to have this kind of weird disconnect as they keep moving features over from point A to point B. But you can kind of see, right, I have that. And when there are messages, it's interesting. I'm trying to find if there's one that's got some content down here. Here we go. When there's messages, right, it'll break out and start having into its own conversation. Oh, here we go. So here where it says there's 11 replies, when I click on it, you'll notice, and this is, I think, kind of one of those like kind of weird, jarry kind of experiences almost. So everything was new at the top. It said there was 11 new messages. I click on it, and now I go into this channel-specific view, and now all the new stuff is on the bottom again. So it's kind of a weird user experience from that. And then if I want to go back to the channel, I can click Go Back to the channel. It sends me back there. But the idea is they're trying to roll up and bubble up the right information to you in the right moments. But I promise you, your end users are going to get confused at some point in time in this experience. It is what it is. Other things that's worth noting, in 2.0, if you ever have like those messages, like the status messages, right? Bob was added, Joe was added, Alice was added, right? Like they can just kind of build up in the channel. None of that's all gone now, and it's thrown all into the sidebar, so it'll help clean up that experience a little bit. That's Channels 2.0. New as well, this is available in classic teams, but not in new teams. See, I should have like a thing at the bottom that tells you which product it's in right now. So in classic teams, we now have the Speaker Coach available. So if you've ever used Speaker Coach in PowerPoint, it's actually a really cool feature, right? You can turn it on, and as you're talking, it will do an AI analysis. Are you talking too fast? Are you talking too slow? What are your filler words? All those kind of things. So that Speaker Coach mentality that's been in PowerPoint, they're moving it into Microsoft Teams as well. So you get that same kind of concept, right? And here on the screen, right, it's telling me that I'm using, in this case, it's, repetitive language. My pace is too fast, right? But I'm good with filler words, those kind of things. So it's going to try to help you, right, as you deliver your presentations to try to, move that along and give you some kind of cool experience. So this is rolling out next month. But again, if you want to play with it today, you could do it in the PowerPoint because it's been there for a very long time. Custom filters. Everyone should be really excited about this because I'm sure those aged 18 to 22 are going to love this. So we've had background blur, right? Background replace, all those kind of fun things. So Microsoft is releasing custom filters. In this case, this is the first party filter, right? So they're laying stuff on the screen for you. But the exciting thing is they're opening up this custom filter to third parties. So now, just imagine, you'll be able to put bunny ears on your head. You'll be able to do all sorts of really exciting things that people have always been waiting for inside their custom filters. So like I said, that 18 to 25 crowd is going to love that. And if anyone's on the call from 18 to 25, I'm not saying that as a mean thing. I just like, it's going to be great. I've never once said to myself, boy, I want bunny ears. I don't know. I just, Mike probably has, but I haven't. I don't know. All right, so custom filters. This one I'm actually really excited about. This one is rolling out here shortly. This is raised hand. So if you've been in a meeting and someone raises their hand, it just sits there and it stays up forever. So people are like, is your hand still up? Is it not? Right? So what's going to happen is after you have spoken, it's going to be like, hey, let's lower your hand for you auto-magically because we know that you talked, so we don't need to keep your hand up for eternity. It will prompt you on the screen so you can push a button to keep your hand raised, but it's going to be a really nice experience just from an end user meeting experience. Meeting menus changed as well, right? So this one, I don't know where this is rolled out publicly yet or not. One of my problems is I never know what's in out versus what's in what ring inside of Teams. But up at the top, you're going to notice that they're going to continue to redesign that menu bar. So certain super common things, right, like raise hand, the react emojis, those type of things that you have to kind of bury and dig around for, they're going to keep moving those things up to the top to make it easier for you to get access to them. So that's the idea. And then they're just trying to make it a little bit easier from a menu experience. You can disable chat. This is kind of helpful, especially for larger town hall kind of scenarios. You'll have the ability now to determine who can chat. So before it was kind of an all or nothing, turn it on, turn it off. Now you'll be able to like turn it on for everyone but anonymous users or guest users and stuff like that. So you'll have that more flexibility from a chat perspective to just make your life a little bit easier. So the file app is getting updated. It feels very much like OneDrive, but the thing that I like about it is up at the top, you'll notice I don't spend enough time in here, but I should. A lot of times people will share a document with you and you're like, I know they shared it. They put it somewhere, right? Was it in a chat? Was it a channel? Was it in a meeting? Like, I don't know, because there's 5 different places they could share it with you. So they've clearly called out a shared to you at the top now, which does a great job of combing across all of your channels and meetings and all that kind of fun stuff to be able to like boil up the files to a singular place so you can actually find this stuff. So if you've ever struggled with finding items, that's what I've enjoyed about this experience. And obviously what you're sharing all shows up here as well now. So overall, all good stuff. You're going to be able to update your profile card here soon, be able to turn on or off the ability to add your own pronouns to individuals. So I've known organizations that have gone in and like changed people's display names as the solution for this. That requires administrative work to do that. That's a lot of work. So Microsoft's going to have this so you can do it right under your profile card. IT admins, you will have the ability to turn this off if you do not want it for whatever reason, but it's just a good inclusive thing to do. We've got some changes coming to emergency calling. So if you're a calling shop and you have 911, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. First off, in the Teams client, Teams Classic, someday coming to new Teams, you're going to have the ability to set your current location, right? And today you have that ability to click edit. And what they're going to do is they're going to feed in the list of locations that are already being used so that it gives you suggestions, right? So by default, you always have to type it in, and you could type it wrong. You go through all that validation silliness. Now they're going to give you a drop-down list and be like, oh, hey, Richard, Sally right next to you use this address, right? And they'll give you suggestions and help you fill in so you can set that 911 stuff even faster. And it's a little bit more in your face to set your 911 location. And then next quarter, they're going to have the same idea, but at the phone level. So on your Teams native phone device, it will show up with the 911 locations and the suggestions and all that kind of fun stuff. So you'll be able to do that from both locations fairly easily. Busy on busy. So if you've ever wanted calls to not come in when you're in a meeting or another call, right? Busy on busy settings are critical. Before, this was an IT only feature. This is rolling out to the end users now. So you will have the ability to do whatever you want. I'm in a call. I want to, right, popular in Europe, I want to play a busy signal. I don't even want it to go to voicemail. I want just fast busy. That's normally what they do in Europe. I want it to go fast busy if someone calls me when I'm on a call. Okay, cool. Or I can redirect it. I can play, send them to voicemail, let the call actually ring in if that's what you want it to do, but you'll have that ability. Call queue recordings, this one is huge. So if you have someone who needs to manage call queues and they go in and out, maybe it's a call queue manager and they need to record a new message for some reason, right? Special day, end of month, I don't know what it is. The current process, right, is they have to record it, get that message to IT. IT has to fiddle around, do their thing, get it posted, right, and hope it all works in the right time. So rolling to the client is IT admins are going to be able to specify who manages the call queue and who has permission to record new messages for the call queue. So directly from the Teams client, you will see, as you can see in this example, we have two, the Zodiac team and the HD bot, right? Those are call queues and auto attendance that I manage. I'll be able to click on those. I'll be able to go record and change the greetings, announcements, and all those kind of fun things. So that to me is a pretty big feature that they kind of just stuffed at the bottom of like 59 pages worth of new features coming out. So bubble these things up, the important ones. Another big one, hotline phones, right? That's I walk up to a phone, I pick it up, I want it to auto dial, whatever, okay? So Teams is introducing the idea of hotline phones. So any Microsoft Teams certified device, you'll be able to go in and set up a calling policy or a configuration policy, and you'll be able to say, I want, as soon as this thing goes off hook, I want to be able to dial this. So receptionist kind of area is a good example, maybe a kitchen area phone, whatever the case is, sales, there's a lot of different examples. We've done a lot of hotline phones over the years. This delegation one I think is pretty big. So this is going to get updated next month, and there's a couple of really huge changes. So there's 3 different screenshots here, and we'll work our way from the left to the right. So on the left-hand side, you see a call that's under the favorites that Ray Talyanka is taking for a delegate, and you'll notice that there's a join button there. So if I have, let's say I have delegated my phone calls to Mike, call comes in, I saw it ring, Mike picks it up, blah, 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 blah. I can click the join button and join into that call and be like, hey, thanks, Mike, thanks for the call, get out of here, right? Whatever the case might be. So it's kind of like that, the barge-in support almost from like a conference center is a good way to think about it, right? So you'll notice in the center screen then, I get to describe or determine how or what I want my delegate to do. So in this case, they can make calls on my behalf, they can receive calls, they can presume calls that were put on hold, they can join active calls, right? And you'll notice they can even change call and delegate permissions if you wanted to. So they wanted to opt out, that kind of stuff.
Just wait a second. Who said?
Mute.
Just don't do it yet.
Oh. I'm muting people. Found it. Okay, cool. So a pretty cool feature that's coming. I'm a big fan of this one. And then the last screen is just another one where you can kind of see a join, resume kind of scenario. So this whole UI experience is going to get overhauled. New dialing experience on the phones, right? If you've used the Teams phones. It's shockingly difficult to pick up a phone and make a phone call at times. It's kind of weird. So they're going to get the dial pad a little bit more front and center, that kind of stuff. Virtual front desk. This one's kind of cool. So I remember this being
Yeah,
like
I know nothing.
the thing.
Okay, thank you.
So you have a device at the front receptionist desk, just like a hotline phone where, you know, pick it up and it rings someone. This is that video conference call. So you could have the big screen, they hit the button, it auto dials, you know, the secretary or something like that. You have a video call with them, you buzz them through the door, whatever the case you might want to do. But this is going to get built into Teams devices, and you just assign it a shared device license, and you'll be able to gain this functionality. So people used to make kiosks, like custom kiosk devices for this for years, right? Now they're just going to bake it into the product natively. Hot desking. This one is fantastic. I've played with this one a few times already. So if you have hot desking in your environment, they're going to have a QR code that you can walk up to, scan with your phone to be able to log in with now. So no more trying to fumble around with hot desking codes and all that kind of fun stuff. A really great way to get into devices. Ad hoc meetings. So on your devices, right, your MTR devices, stuff like that, they're making it easier for us to do ad hoc meetings when we're in the room. So that's really exciting. Also the meeting, join via meeting ID. So if you want to join a meeting, right, on an MTR or an MTA device, right, if you know what the meeting ID is, you can just go in and type it in now. You don't have to like try to find the code and do all that other fun stuff. And then this one I'm really excited about. It's the old extend time. You're in a room, you want to continue going, right? So, but you're out of time, right? But there's availability. You want to be able to extend the time in the room, but also have the calendar update, right? So that people can't try to book on top of you. So as the meeting gets to the end, if you're still in the room, still having the meeting, it's going to prompt you and ask you if you want to extend it. You can go ahead and do that extension, and it's like magic sauce. And the calendar gets updated and all sorts of fun stuff. So that's the small list of new stuff that's coming out. I'll put the tech community article because there was 59 items on that list that they announced, and I just try to hit the big ones. But there's a ton of stuff that is rolling out. And not almost, every single item that was on that 59 item list, excluding a couple of these meeting things, none of them require like premium licensing or anything like that. So it's just all inside the standard kind of CAL environment. So, let me go find my screen share. All right. So any questions about any of those items? All right. So see, these are things I didn't think about. So for our drawing, I'm going to drop this thing, a form in, but you guys probably didn't join the meeting. So I didn't have a way for you to get the form. See, there's things I didn't think about for the first time going to hybrid. How do I get the form to people who are in the room? So I just dropped a form in there for the drawing. So hopefully that's open. If someone could like confirm that, that would be spectacular for me. Okay, thank goodness. All right. So we'll give it a few minutes. If people have questions, I can answer them during this time. If not, then, you're just going to have to listen to me try to, spin aimlessly. Those who fill out the form, by the way, are enrolled in the giveaway. So if you want to be in on the giveaway, this is your opportunity to try to get something cool from our friends at Jabra. If you don't want it, then I guess don't fill out the form. I mean, that's pretty simple.
I gotta figure out how to get in the meeting again.
All right, hold on.
I'll find that. There's the link.
Got it? Okay. Otherwise, I was going to give you the code. I'd make you type it out. Be like, type. I see people filling out the form, so that's a good sign.
You select which one you want to give first or second.
I'm going to let them pick. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's going to be great.
Me too.
I'll say, which one do you want? So the two giveaways, just in case you didn't get here, reference. The first item we have here is one of the brand new, this is the Speak 275s. These are the Cadillac of hockey puck. You can use that term.
Oh, the puck, yeah. The new pucks.
The new pucks, right? The Cadillac of the new pucks.
It's a classic puck. But
Right, exactly. Not a classic puck. Did you guys do the same naming? Why did you pick Speak 2? It should have been Speak New and Speak Classic.
Evolve to speak to.
Oh, I know.
Better than doing SC second edition.
I saw what you did, right? Your marketing team, it made sense. Microsoft, we're still on the fence. And then we also have a Panacast 20. So this is my camera I use at home. As mentioned before, it does all the fancy autofocusing. It's a great 4K camera. Like, I'm a fan of this camera.
Great new price.
Huh?
Great new price too. MSRP dropped to $199.
$199? Can't beat that. All right. Give it a few more minutes. Hopefully people are filling this out. This is where I should put the form out earlier, so there's not like this weird random Richard needs to fill.
Can you post it again?
Yeah, I can.
Let me see the old stuff.
Multiple times.
That I think I'll see. Just got to throw it out there. That work? Sweet. All right.
Assisting with the interview.
I think next month we're gonna have even cooler stuff. I'm gonna try to get more people to come in person. So I'm gonna keep amping up the cool stuff.
The muffins bring cake.
Just pie or pie. I mean, bring either way. You can
Bring
choose.
pie, bring cake, bring all the muffins of the land.
I get it because I've been working as a.
Now with pie, yeah. Now with new pie, not
New
classic.
pie,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Not classic pie.
The new pie.
All right. Is there anyone still working on filling out the form? This is your opportunity to say something. All these quiet people. All right. All right, let's see. Let me get the results. Oh, there we go. Open Excel. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's just a headhunter.
Yeah.
Da, da, da. Brilliant. There we go. All right, last call. Going, gone. All right, Mr. Little, I have wow, can't even speak, randomized this list. Can you give me a number between 1 and 20, please?
17.
17. Clickety, clickety, clickety. Corey Wagner.
Woohoo!
There we go. Would you like the Cadillac of hockey pucks or the Cadillac of cameras?
Ooh.
I know.
Decisions.
I'm gonna set that there, and then just make them stare at them.
Looking longingly.
Yep, exactly. Mike, give me another number that's not 17, but
4.
4. All right. Don Greff. Don, are you still online?
I am.
You are. All right. Corey's making an important decision here. So you're going to get whatever Corey didn't want. There's no pressure here, Corey. In a moment, I'm going to let Don pick. So
Do the camera.
he's going to do the camera. All right. So Don, I will email you so
Okay.
I can ship this to you. Oh, this one. Sorry.
Ship me to, she just wants to send me
Huh?
ship me an address or whatever, either way I can ship it.
Okay. All right. So I'll drop you an email and we'll get it addressed so we can ship this awesome Speak 75 to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So I always will try to shoot and make done. We're at hour 45. It's 1:41. Look at that for timing. Dang. Now I only had to fill for like 5 minutes there. So I want to thank everyone for coming to the Teams users group meeting. As always, if you have topics that you want to hear about, please let me know. And I am happy to get that added to the queue, speakers, all that kind of fun stuff. Thank you to Jabra for the awesome giveaways and for the information. And thank you to Michael for all that info. And I will get out slides and recordings and all the good stuff. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And chat soon.